Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Joining us on the show, the Guardian sports writer Jonathan Liew and the Telegraph's football reporter Sam Dean. Welcome to you both, gents. Great to have you here. Let's quickly run through the back pages before we get into the conversation. Telegraph sports supplement has this. Everton update from Tom Morgan and Chris Bascom. Tycoon fans plot Everton bid. Local businessmen in line to step in if 777 takeover fails. Image there as well of Ayoub Al-Khabi, the Moroccan scoring for Olympiacos as Aston Villa exit the Europa Conference League. All in ruins, they say. Trophy hopes end as Villa flop in Greece. A lot of references to ancient Greece here. The Telegraph also focuses on the new rugby union rules to be introduced as scrums are banned from free kicks. Back page of the Sun, Watkins and come Acropolis. What WAT a way to go. They also focus on Chelsea. The headline is Beautiful. Todd Bowley hails Poch's pretty football and hints job is safe. And a United line, Ten Hag's pain plea, wants his walking wounded to play through pain to avoid a massacre, they say, by Arsenal on Sunday. And the Eye lead with Villa being dumped out of Europe. But down and out, Olympiacos seal Villa's fate in Greek tragedy. And another story, the Eye going with policing matches cost us, the taxpayer, more than £30 million a season in England. Well, gents, let's start with Aston Villa out of the Europa Conference League, humbled by Olympiacos, 6-2 on aggregate in the night. In your paper, Sam, the Telegraph, trophy hopes end as Villa flop in Greece. Is flop fair, Sam? What do you think about the wording there?
I understand why we've gone with the word flop there, given the scoreline and given how these two legs have panned out for Villa, and also given that Unai Emery's experience in this kind of competition. Emery, obviously, as everyone knows, is the master of Thursday night football. And I think a lot of people in football, and especially in Birmingham, would have expected Villa to get through this tie. And Olympiacos have historically caused a lot of problems for English teams in Europe. But the power of the Premier League is such that most people would have expected Villa to go through. And therefore, I think this is a bit of a disappointment. It wasn't even close in the end. I think today they had a few half chances, but that was kind of it. And Olympiacos punished them. And obviously, separate to that, it means that there'll be no English teams in any of the finals of European competitions this season. So it's a blow for everyone and not just for Villa. Yeah,
Premier League's reeling. Back page of the Sun. Jonathan, we mentioned it a moment ago. Watkins and co. come Acropolis. Great headline with Ollie Watkins with his hand up in the air. What do you make of this? Has it been an ego check all round for the Premier League?
Well, I think Villa have just run out of steam, haven't they? I think, in terms of the league as a whole, we often tend to read too much into what are often, one-off results. It's a really low sample size. If Manchester City, come through that penalty shootout against Real Madrid, they probably go on and win the competition. And likewise, Arsenal, who came so close against Bayern. I mean, Villa, have had an amazing season, and I think the last 3 or 4 games we've seen that, that they are still trying to play that kind of ambitious, expansive football that they've been playing all season, but the parts just aren't quite fitting together in the way they were. And I think that's understandable. If you look at how much some of their players have played, Watkins, I think, has played, I think it was his 53rd game this season, if you include England. Douglas Luiz has played over 50 as well. And often they've had to rely on these guys to play 2 or 3 games a week because the squad depth isn't the same as what it is for the very top teams in the Premier League. In terms of the fans who are certainly on telly, that sounded amazing. It's not as if they've missed out on a final trip to Athens because they got their trip to Athens tonight, and it's not like they've missed out on Europa League football by winning the Conference League because it looks like they're going to qualify for the Champions League. So I think if you offered Villa fans, 4th place and a European semi-final at the start of the season, I think they'd have bitten your hand off.
Absolutely. It's a long time since they won the European Cup, isn't it, Sam? I think it's 28 years since they last won a trophy, the League Cup in '96. The Guardian back page has the headline, Olympiacos crush Villa's final hopes. Do you think hope does spring eternal a little bit for Aston Villa for next season, or do you feel that perhaps, as Jonathan says, running out of puff a bit, the indication is that maybe they need reinforcements to compete in the Champions League?
Yeah, definitely. I think for a lot of people from sort of November, December onwards, there was an expectation that this Villa squad couldn't go on both fronts and couldn't go all the way. And I think most people, and myself included, assumed it would be in the Premier League where they fell down a bit. The Thursday night, Sunday game combination is sort of famously tricky. And I think people saw that and really kind of feared for Villa towards the end of the season. But to their credit, they clung on in the league and they're looking good for the Champions League spot now. So absolutely incredible job by Unai Emery. And yes, they've paid the price to a degree in Thursday night football, but that's going to happen. And if they could pick one, they would certainly have picked qualifying for the Champions League. In terms of next summer, yeah, we know how ambitious Villa's owners are. We know how much they want to invest in the squad and how much they have done so already. And depending on PSR complications and the regulations there and all the issues that so many clubs are dealing with right now, and Villa are not exempt from that in any sense, depending on that, they will try and invest again, I'm sure, and they will try and consolidate this position they've created for themselves, really crashing that top table and undermining the Big Six and maybe potentially even creating a new Big Six or Big Seven going forward.
Indeed, the Times back page into us as well have John McGinn pictured that they're in Greece. Limp Villa miss out on Euro final, their back page. John McGinn showing his frustrations, they report. Jonathan, what's your take on what Aston Villa's mood should be amongst the fans in particular? Do you feel that next season they can kick on further, or will it be more difficult with some of the giants perhaps bouncing back?
It will be more difficult. I mean, the fact that they've made the top four is as much a product of the fact that a lot of their rivals have also seen a dip. I mean, I think Spurs and the likes of Spurs and Manchester United particularly will be kicking themselves when they look at how Villa have kind of fallen away in the last couple of months. There was a real opportunity there to overtake them. So obviously Villa are going to need a bit of investment in the summer. They're going to need to fill out that squad a little bit. They are, I think, a little bit over-reliant. Well, they're relying on Watkins, who has been fantastic for them this season, but he's going to need some help. I think they need to reinforce in the fullback positions as well. But I think if you can't be optimistic after a season like they've just had, then what are you in football for? This is exactly the sort of season that Villa fans would have dreamed of when they were trawling through the Championship, getting crowds of about 25, 30,000, or even struggling against relegation. Getting their best players picked off. This is the kind of season that sustains a lot of these big clubs which have maybe sort of fallen away from the top table for a while. It's the dream of kind of getting back, being in the conversation again, challenging for big trophies. And if they can go on a run next season in the Champions League, some big Champions League like Villa Park, a run in one of the domestic cups, there's no reason why this story can't continue. They've got a great manager and they've got a great setup, a backroom setup in place as well.
Absolutely, optimism then that Villa can restore that past glory. Let's look at a team last won the title in the 1980s as well. Everton, Sam, I suppose similar parallels with Villa, but going in a different direction at the moment. They are safe. Back page of the Sun, I believe we can go to for this story about Everton. U-turn for Mashiri. Martin Lipton and Ken Lawrence reporting that Everton's fading hopes of a rescue from potential financial disaster is in the hands of a consortium they rejected last year. Sam, could you put a little bit more flesh on the bones here?
Yeah, so this story is in a few papers tonight and tomorrow morning. It focuses mainly on an American firm, MSP Sports Capital, who, according to the Telegraph and other papers as well, will be targeted as potential buyers for Everton in the case of the deal with 7-7 Partners falling through, which seems increasingly likely based on reports in the last few days. And MSP, I think it's important to make clear that they have been in the picture for a while with Everton. They had talks last year over investment and even entered into a period of exclusivity as they looked to buy the club. That didn't happen, but they've still got money tied up in the club, in the business. And it's all a bit complicated and a bit fiddly. But I think the hope now, there is some hope at least, that they might be willing to come back to the table and potentially pursue a more sort of sustained, aggressive investment. And hopefully, from I think a lot of Everton's fans' point of view, and we'll see, could spell the end for this 7-7 Partners situation, which is becoming increasingly ugly, I think, and causing a lot of concern among a lot of supporters in Everton.
Indeed, as well. Very candid press conference, Jonathan, with Sean Dyche, and covered on the back page of your paper, The Guardian. Dyche warns top talent will be sold if there is no takeover. How anxious do you think Everton fans will be the next couple of weeks, and thinking ahead to next season as well, and who might or might not be playing for them?
Yeah, I mean, there is this talk, as Sam says, there is this talk of new investment, but the longer this goes on, the longer this goes on, Everton need to find, I think it's something like £16 million a month, with not just the cost of running the site, running the club, but also the cost of the new stadium, which are mounting and continuing. So the longer this goes on, the more and more they kind of dig themselves into this hole. The worse position they're going to be in. It's not like the collapse of the 7-7 deal puts them back to square one because they are now further in debt. Mashiri now has to find either has to find new investors or has to find more money. And the longer that goes on, the more new investors, the more likely it is that new investors are going to demand that Mashiri's loans to the club, which I think run to about £500 million, are going to be written off. So in that situation, what incentive is there for Mashiri to keep bankrolling the club, or to keep to basically stay there? I mean, I think that's the issue here. The longer this goes on, the deeper and deeper the hole Everton are digging themselves into, the harder it's going to be for Sean Dyche, and the harder it's going to be for them to keep the top talent they have at that club. And I think the more advantageous position any new investor is going to be to dictate the terms of a takeover in their favour and make it, I guess, hard for Everton to be in any kind of negotiating position.
Absolutely. We wish Everton, of course, and the fans all the best in the resolution of that situation, perhaps strengthening calls for that independent regulator as well. Let's talk Manchester United, another club having a little bit of trouble at the moment, Sam, and the Express, United fearing the worst ahead of Arsenal on Super Sunday. Could this be the nadir that we've written about and talked about a lot already? Could it be the low point?
Yeah, I was there at Selhurst Park on Monday night when Erik Ten Hag described it as the low point of the season so far, that 4-0 defeat by Crystal Palace. And in that moment and sort of on the night, it was hard to imagine anything different panning out against Arsenal this weekend. But then with each passing day, you kind of think that's not how football works, and there has to be some sort of reaction. And the form table suggests Arsenal will go there and roll them over. But I can't see how a club, even one as devoid of new ideas and so short of fit players as well, even a club in a situation like Man United, they can't just roll over again the way they did. And there has to be some professional pride kick in, a professional pride that I think was very obviously lacking on Monday night. And in a weird way, I kind of fear for Arsenal to a degree, but I think that sounds a bit stupid to say it on TV, but that's how I feel. And I think with injuries sort of clearing up to a tiny degree, this Andre Martinez coming back in, for example, could be huge for United. And yeah, I think it's clear. I think we can all see, and I'm sure Jonathan agrees, that the Ten Hag era is coming towards an end. And I think there are good reasons for that, given their form and some of their performances. But I can't shake the feeling that the low point was Monday, and they can't sink quite that low again before the end of the season. But they have proved me wrong on that kind of thing a few times this season, so perhaps they will do so again. Well,
Gary Neville on Sky Sports News this evening has said that he thinks Ten Hag should have one more season, Jonathan. Let's go to Neil Custis in the Sun. Ten Hag's pain plea. Erik Ten Hag wants his walk-in wounded to play through the pain and avoid a massacre by Arsenal. If he can rally something against the champions or the would-be champions in Arsenal, would that stand him in good stead? Could he redeem himself and get another sniff next season?
Well, I don't think there's too many forms of pain greater than having to read a Neil Custis article. But I suppose if you get through that, sorry Neil, sorry, I know he's watching. I have a weird feeling about United this weekend. I am a lot stupider than Sam, so I am going to say it on TV. I think United could pose Arsenal some real problems, especially given the rut they're in, and especially given the kind of match that. It's totally different. It's a totally different game from the ones that United have been losing recently. I think if you ask a lot of United fans going to Anfield, for example, or going into the cup tie against Liverpool, that they were fearing the worst. But the way that game turned out actually turned out to be more of a fit for United's kind of chaotic game of total transition sort of style. I think Ten Hag has. I agree with Sam. I think his tenure is at an end. I think the new regime are sniffing around, and I think they're going to want, as well as all the statements, signings they've made behind the scenes, I think they're going to want a new coach who I think fits more closely with their vision for the club. I think that's just, I think it's business, more than a reflection on anything Ten Hag has done, who I think has actually improved United in a lot of aspects, although not obviously in terms of results. So I think. There's a kind of, like Sam says, a specious pride that kicks in. They're going to want to have a say in this title race, and I think Arsenal will have a very, very dangerous game come this weekend.
Welcome back. You are watching Backpages tonight, and it's welcome back to the Guardian sports writer Jonathan Liew, the Telegraph's football reporter Sam Dean. Let's go to the Times, Jonathan. FIFA facing legal action from players. Union says Club World Cup is serious injury risk. What chance of the players of changing FIFA's plans?
I'd say they have two chances, fat and none. But it's worthy of talking about, I think, because I think FIFA Pro have, I think, for years now, actually, kind of been banging their head against a brick wall when it comes to talking to the major governing bodies, talking to the major stakeholders, broadcasters, in terms of getting player welfare on the table. And FIFA Pro they don't just represent multimillionaires; they represent guys who are maybe playing, in smaller leagues, international football all over the world, who aren't earning millionaire salaries, and yet are being flogged 50, 60 games a season, and this is the sort of thing that, obviously you mentioned the word lawsuit and people get involved. It's going to get them a little bit more publicity. I don't think anyone's going to successfully sue FIFA. Certainly not going to muscle them off the Club World Cup, which is basically Infantino's little baby, which is planned for next summer, 32-team tournament, the kind of the jewel in FIFA's crown, muscling onto UEFA's territory. This is obviously a huge tournament for FIFA, and it does come with risks to player welfare. It's a summer that you would normally expect the top players to be having off. It's kind of odd numbered summer. It's a non-tournament summer for European based players, certainly. So that there, and it's obviously going to be played in the US in summer, which has its own kind of climactic implications as well. So I think FIFA are right to be putting this on the table. I'm just not sure they're going to get anywhere with it.
Sam, what's your stance on the subject here as well? FIFA and UEFA have been expanding tournaments, haven't they? Rather than domestic leagues are pretty consistent. Even the French league's reduced its number of games. Do you feel that they are to blame for player burnout? And do you think, in a way, they're just trading on patriotism? Is that why players keep showing up to these tournaments?
I think partly. I also think this conversation needs to come down to clubs as well. A lot of the focus when this kind of story comes out is on expansion and competitions, but even if clubs just play the current existing competitions and pick the same players to play all the time, that is going to cause the same problems. And I think to a certain degree, a lot of managers complain about this situation and they complain about the workload on players, but then come Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon, they'll pick those same players again all the time. And that, I suppose, comes down to them trying to protect their own jobs and saying, I can't drop my star number 10 because I might lose my job if I lose this game. So the issue comes back to all sorts of different things that go beyond a new tournament in the summer. I mean, I think a new tournament in the summer is a catchy way of the players' unions bringing this up. But the fundamental issues run from August to May, when the players are playing all the time at full intensity. And then also, to continue to sort of discuss the issue with the clubs, what about post-season matches? Newcastle and Spurs are playing each other 3 days after the season ends in May. So I find that the argument about there being too many competitions is absolutely true. But also, this calendar is getting filled by other people too. It's not just FIFA and UEFA and the sort of the bodies. The clubs are taking the chance to get their money too. They're going to Australia 3 days after the season. They're all flying to the United States or Singapore or China or wherever for a pre-season tournament that really takes out the players too. So yes, the fundamental issue is the players are getting told to do what they're getting told to do, but more people than just the organisers of the tournament can deal with this. And that's not to say that FIFA and UEFA are blameless, but it's to say this issue is wider and bigger. And I find this slightly hard to stomach when managers complain about it all the time, but don't do what they can do themselves and protect their own players.
Fair point, Sam. Thank you very much. An issue we'll come back to, no doubt, in due course. Let's talk Graham Potter, Jonathan. Back page of the Times. Potter turns down Ajax job. Nice manager Francesco Farioli now the favourite, according to Jonathan Northcroft. Are you surprised that he turned that down, Jonathan? And should we read anything into it about what he might be waiting for?
A little bit. I mean, I guess for any manager, the romantic pull, the historical pull of Ajax is hard to turn down. But if you look at the way that club has been run and the way that club has been playing this season, they are a bit of a mess. They flirted with relegation in the Eredivisie this season, and the back room has been totally ripped apart. There's been scandal after scandal, coaches coming in and out the door, and clearly Graham Potter is the sort of guy who wants to work at a club that has a kind of stability. That's what you would crave after the madhouse that was Chelsea for 6 months or 7 months or however long he was there. He's going to want a project where he can kind of feel secure and build something. And I think for any manager of his kind of ambition, he's going to want a Premier League job. I mean, there has been talk of him at United. There's been talk that Brailsford and Radcliffe and there's kind of the hierarchy there, are admirers of him, and maybe that's what he's hanging on for. But I think Ajax would probably be a step down for him at the moment. He is still highly regarded. I think he gets not a free pass, but I think that there are mitigating circumstances over how things ended for him at Chelsea. It was a really ridiculous situation there. So I think he's entitled to kind of start with a clean slate at a club which, I think actually offers him a decent project.
Yeah, we'll keep across Graham Potter. It's a massive rebuilding project at Ajax, it seems, isn't it? Let's talk by Leverkusen, where Xabi Alonso is about to complete football. Levese Die is from the Sun online. Bayer Leverkusen score last-minute equaliser. Sam, we've only got about 30 seconds or so, but how remarkable is this story regarding Bayer Leverkusen?
Yeah, incredible. I think that's 49 successive games in a row unbeaten. I think that's a European record. I mean, what he's done there is just sensational. And I actually love, and I'm sure Jonathan agrees, given his sort of European slant on things, I think it's so great that he's staying there and not just being guzzled up by the Premier League or La Liga or whoever, like a big giant. And he's taken this club and wants to carry on with it. And what he's done has been one of the most remarkable jobs in Europe for the last couple of decades, really.
Absolutely. Jonathan, quickly, is rugby banning scrums from free kicks? Is that a good move? 20 seconds you've got?
I can't stand scrums. I think most fans don't have a clue what they are. Like old fuddy-duddies think, it's some noble art of the game. But I think most people just like, what the hell are you doing? Get rid of them. Also, rugby league is better.
OK, in that case, kick into touch or a tap. You won't be watching that either. Brilliant stuff. We had a good rugby league tonight. Jonathan and Sam, brilliant to have you here tonight as well. We'll see you soon.